Her contract wedding to a handicapped billionaire turned into something real. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let us get back to our main character. Rain slid down the glass walls of a penthouse office overlooking Manhattan, painting silver lines across the night. The city buzzed far below, but inside, everything was still too still. Across the wide marble desk, a man in a dark suit watched the woman sitting before him. His wheelchair was sleek and black, its quiet hum breaking the silence every time he moved an inch. "Marry me," he said calmly, his tone more like a business proposal than a confession. "Think of it as a contract." The woman blinked, unsure if she had heard correctly. "I am sorry, what did you just say?" His eyes did not waver. "I need a wife. You need stability. We can help each other." Her breath caught. She looked at the folder on the table, its edges crisp, its contents neatly typed. At the top, in bold black letters, were the words, "Marriage Agreement." She let out a shaky laugh. "You do not even know me." "I know enough," he replied. "You are responsible. Quiet. You owe hospital bills for your mother, and your landlord is about to evict you. I have already looked into it." Her face burned. "So this is pity?" "No," he said, voice low and measured. "It is strategy. It not as of flies, in the braid not menace." A storm rumbled outside as if punctuating his words. The hum of the city lights bled into the silence between them. She wanted to walk away, to call him heartless, but something in his expression stopped her. It was not arrogance, it was exhaustion. A man used to control everything, yet somehow losing grip on the one thing that mattered. He pushed the folder toward her. "1 year, you will attend public events as my wife. You will live here, follow the terms, and when the time ends, you will leave with enough money to start over. You will not fall in love with me. Understood?" She stared at him, her mind spinning between disbelief and desperation. "And if I say no?" "Then you keep drowning in debts," he answered quietly. "And your mother's treatment stops next week." Her fingers trembled as she reached for the pen. The paper rustled softly beneath her hand. Somewhere in her chest, something cracked a soundless surrender. When she finally looked up, his gaze met hers, calm and unyielding. "Sign it," he said, "and you will never have to beg anyone again." She hesitated only a moment longer before writing her name. The pen's ink bled into the paper like a vow neither of them truly understood. He took the document, signed his name in perfect strokes, and closed the folder. "Welcome to our arrangement, Mrs. Hale." She swallowed hard, her voice barely a whisper. "This does not feel like a wedding." "It is not," he said. "Not yet." Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the edge of the gold ring resting on the table between them. The air felt heavy, charged with something neither contract nor logic could define. As the clock struck midnight, the sound echoed through the glass room, cold, final, and binding. Their deal was sealed, but neither realized they had just stepped into something far deeper than a legal agreement. Something real. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the thin curtains of her small apartment, revealing the boxes piled against the walls. Each one was filled with unpaid bills, rejected job applications, and quiet fragments of a life that had been shrinking for months. Sophia Hale sat at the kitchen table, staring at the folder she had brought home from his office. The words "marriage agreement" glinted faintly under the light. She had read every page twice, yet the reality still refused to settle in. She was going to marry a man she barely knew, a billionaire confined to a wheelchair, who treated marriage like a merger and love like a liability. Her phone buzzed beside a half-empty cup of coffee. It was a text message from the hospital. "Final notice. Payment due today." Sophia's chest tightened. She had promised her mother's doctor that she would find a way, but the truth was she had nothing left, no savings, no steady income, no one to call for help. She pressed her hands to her face and exhaled slowly. By 9 o'clock, she stood outside the glass tower of Carter Industries, her reflection trembling against the polished surface. Inside that building waited the man who had offered her a way out. Ethan Carter, a self-made billionaire who had built an empire in technology before an accident, had taken the use of his legs. When she entered the marble lobby, the air smelled faintly of cedar and cold air conditioning. Everyone who passed wore tailored suits and walked with purpose. She felt invisible among them, clutching the folder to her chest. At the front desk, the receptionist smiled politely. "Do you have an appointment, miss?" "Yes," Sophia managed. "Mr. Carter is expecting me." Moments later, she was inside the elevator, watching the numbers climb. Each floor felt like a step further away from the life she knew, and a step closer to something she could not define. When the doors opened on the top floor, a young assistant led her to Ethan's office. He was already there, positioned near the window, the city skyline stretching endlessly behind him. The morning light softened the sharp lines of his face. For a moment, he looked almost fragile, but the air around him carried the quiet authority of someone who had never needed to raise his voice to be obeyed. "You are early," he said, his tone neutral. "I could not sleep," she admitted. He nodded once, as if that answer made sense. Then he gestured toward the folder she carried. "Did you read everything carefully?" "I did. That is Hans Seferdishen. And you still agree?" Sophia hesitated, then gave a single nod. "Yes." Ethan opened a drawer and took out a pen with a silver barrel. "Then let us sign this properly." As she took the pen, her hand trembled slightly. The pages were thick and crisp, filled with cold words that would bind two strangers together for 1 year. When she signed her name, she felt her heart sink and her breath catch in her throat. He added his signature beneath hers, smooth and decisive. "Congratulations, Mrs. Carter," he said quietly. "Our wedding is this evening. It will be small, private, and efficient." "Efficient," she repeated, the word foreign and sharp on her tongue. He gave a faint smile that never reached his eyes. "I do not waste time." By the time she left his office, her mind was spinning. She walked past rows of employees who had no idea that, in a matter of hours, she would become the wife of the man who owned everything they worked for. That afternoon, a black car pulled up in front of her apartment building. The driver stepped out and handed her a neatly pressed white dress in a garment bag and a note written in clean, masculine handwriting. "Wear this. Do not be late." She dressed in silence, her reflection a stranger in the mirror. The dress fit perfectly, too perfectly, as if measured long before she had said yes. When the car stopped outside the courthouse, dusk had already fallen. The air smelled of rain and gasoline, the city lights flickering in puddles along the curb. Ethan was waiting at the entrance, his suit tailored flawlessly, his chair positioned beneath the soft glow of the streetlight. He looked up as she approached. "Are you ready?" Sophia swallowed. "As ready as I can be." Inside, the ceremony was brief. No music, no flowers, no guests. The officiant spoke in a calm, steady tone, as they exchanged vows written by lawyers instead of lovers. "Do you, Ethan Carter, take this woman, Sophia Hale, to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do," he said without hesitation. "And do you, Sophia Hale, take this man, Ethan Carter, to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Her voice trembled, but she answered, "I do." The officiant signed the paper and handed the document to Ethan's attorney. It was over. Just like that. Ethan extended his hand. "Welcome to our arrangement," he said. "From this moment, you are Mrs. Carter." She took his hand. It was warm, steady, and unexpectedly human. For a fleeting second, she saw something in his eyes that was not power or control, something closer to pain. Outside, the rain began to fall again, thin and relentless, tapping softly against the car windows as they drove away from the courthouse. The city blurred into streaks of gold and gray. Sophia stared out at the lights and whispered, more to herself than to him, "This is not how I imagined marriage would feel." Ethan's voice came quietly beside her. "Neither did I." And in that silence, their deal no longer felt like numbers on paper. It felt like the beginning of something neither of them could name. The drive to Ethan Carter's estate felt like traveling into another world. Beyond the city, the streets grew wider, quieter, lined with trees glowing under the soft drizzle. When the car finally stopped, Sophia's breath caught. Before her rose a mansion of white stone and glass, framed by manicured gardens and tall iron gates that gleamed in the rain. Ethan's voice broke the silence. "Welcome home." The driver opened the door, and Sophia stepped out, clutching her small purse like a lifeline. The air smelled faintly of jasmine and wet pavement. Inside, the foyer was enormous marble floors, golden chandeliers, walls lined with portraits of stern faces that seemed to watch her every move. She had never seen such quiet wealth before. A housekeeper appeared and spoke softly. "Mrs. Carter, your room is ready." Sophia turned to Ethan, who sat calmly in his chair, his expression unreadable. "Separate rooms?" she asked. He nodded. "Of course. Mine is down the hall. This is a partnership, not a romance." Her cheeks flushed, half from relief, half from confusion. "I understand. Dinner is at 7, he said. "We will eat together when appearances require it. Otherwise, you are free to occupy yourself." "Thank you," she replied quietly. After he left, she stood in the silence of her new suite. The room overlooked a vast garden, its windows taller than the walls of her old apartment. The bed looked untouched, the sheets crisp and white. Everything was perfect, too perfect. It felt like living inside a photograph. She placed her small suitcase on the dresser. Inside were the only remnants of her former life: a few worn clothes, her mother's photograph, and a letter she could never finish. For a long time, she just stood there, staring at her reflection in the mirror. The woman in the glass wore a wedding ring that sparkled under the lamplight, but her eyes still looked uncertain, as if she were trying to remember who she used to be. When dinner came, she joined Ethan in the dining room. The table could have seated 20, but only 2 places were set. A quiet fire flickered in the marble hearth. Ethan ate slowly, his movements precise. He hardly looked at her, yet his presence filled the space. "You are very quiet," he said finally. "I am still adjusting," Sophia admitted. "It feels strange being here." "It will," he replied. "This house was built to impress, not to comfort." She glanced at him, surprised by the honesty in his tone. For a moment, he did not look like a billionaire or a man of business. He looked tired, haunted even. After dinner, he guided his chair toward the elevator. "Tomorrow, we will attend a charity event. The press will be there. You will need to look confident. People in my circle respect composure." Sophia nodded, though her heart raced. "I will do my best." "Good," he said, pressing the elevator button. The doors opened, and before disappearing inside, he added, "And remember, our story must look real." When he was gone, the house fell silent again. Sophia walked back to her room, her footsteps echoing down the polished corridor. She stood by the window, watching rain trail down the glass. Somewhere beyond those gates, her mother lay in a hospital bed, unaware that her daughter had sold a piece of her future to save her. And yet, as the storm softened, Sophia could not shake the image of Ethan's eyes, calm, guarded, but filled with something she could not name. Perhaps loneliness recognized its own reflection. She turned off the light and lay awake long after midnight, the weight of the contract heavy on her hand where the ring shimmered faintly in the dark. Outside, the city lights flickered in the distance, and for the first time since signing her name, she wondered if this deal had already started to change her in ways she did not expect. The next morning began with the soft hum of the elevator outside her room. Sophia opened her eyes to sunlight spilling through the tall windows. For a moment, she forgot where she was, then the silence reminded her. No city noise, no neighbor's footsteps, no reminders of her old life, only the stillness of wealth. She dressed simply and made her way downstairs. The dining room was empty, except for a folded note on the table. In neat handwriting, it read, "Your stylist will arrive at noon. The event begins at 6. Please be ready." Her stomach twisted. The charity event Ethan had mentioned was tonight, their first public appearance as husband and wife. At noon, a team arrived: stylists, makeup artists, and a woman named Clara who seemed to know exactly what Mrs. Carter should look like. Dresses were laid out across the bed, each one more beautiful than the last. Sophia hesitated before a deep sapphire gown. Clara smiled. "That color will photograph well next to him," she said, "and it will make your eyes stand out." When evening came, the car waited at the front steps. Ethan was already inside, dressed in a tailored black suit, his expression as composed as always. The air between them carried a quiet tension. "You look appropriate," he said after a long pause. "Thank you," she replied. "I will try not to embarrass you." His gaze softened slightly. "You will not." The ride to the downtown hotel was silent. Through the window, skyscrapers glittered against the night sky. Sophia's hands rested in her lap, her pulse steady but uneasy. She kept repeating the rules in her mind. Composure, smile, no personal questions, no mistakes. When they entered the ballroom, the flash of cameras hit like a wave. Conversations paused, heads turned. reporters murmured. Ethan Carter, the reclusive billionaire who rarely appeared in public, had arrived with a new wife no one had ever heard of. Sophia forced a small smile as Ethan guided his chair beside her. His hand brushed hers lightly, a signal to stay calm. He leaned closer, his voice low enough for only her to hear. They will watch everything. Breathe slowly. She nodded, her heart pounding. People greeted them with polite curiosity. Investors, politicians, and journalists surrounded them like a tide. Each smile felt like a test she had to pass. A woman with diamond earrings leaned toward Sophia. "You must tell us how you met," she said sweetly, though her tone dripped with disbelief. Sophia's throat tightened. Before she could answer, Ethan spoke smoothly. "At a conference in Boston," he said. "She was giving a talk about healthcare reform. I was impressed. Would she go and rally men?" The group laughed lightly, their skepticism masked behind champagne glasses. Sophia turned to him, startled. His face betrayed nothing. Later, during the dinner portion, Ethan's old business rival approached the table. "I see you have surprised us all, Carter," the man said with a grin that did not reach his eyes. "A sudden marriage? People will talk." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Let them." The rival looked at Sophia. "And what do you do, Mrs. Carter?" Sophia met his gaze and answered softly but firmly. "I take care of what matters." For a second, the man seemed caught off guard. Ethan's lips curved into the faintest smile. When the evening ended, cameras flashed one last time as they left the building. In the car, Sophia exhaled a long breath she had not realized she was holding. "You handled yourself well," Ethan said quietly. "I almost froze," she admitted. "Then it is a good thing you did not." He looked out the window as the city lights blurred past. For the first time since their wedding, she saw something unguarded in him, a trace of respect. As the car pulled into the long driveway of the mansion, neither spoke again. But when he reached to open the door for her, his hand lingered for a second longer than necessary. It was a small gesture, almost unnoticeable, but it carried something real, something that had not been written in any contract. The following days passed in a quiet rhythm that neither of them spoke about. The contract had drawn clear lines, formal meals, polite small talk, separate rooms. But the longer Sophia stayed in that mansion, the more blurred those lines became. Every morning she found Ethan already awake, seated near the window of his study. He worked for hours, his focus unshakable, his expression unreadable. Yet sometimes, when he thought she was not looking, she noticed his hand press against his leg, the faint grimace he tried to hide. The accident that had left him in the wheelchair was never mentioned, but the silence around it was heavy. One afternoon, Sophia brought him a cup of coffee. He looked up from his laptop. "You did not have to," he said. "I wanted to," she replied. "You have been working since sunrise." He hesitated, then nodded. "Thank you." The smallest exchange felt significant, like the first crack in a wall neither had intended to build. That evening, the rain returned. The mansion felt too large, its halls echoing with emptiness. Sophia wandered into the library, running her fingers across the rows of books. A photograph on the shelf caught her eye. It was Ethan, standing beside a sleek car, smiling. His legs were straight, strong. He looked different, freer. She did not hear him approach until his voice broke the silence. That was taken 3 years ago. She turned quickly. He was watching her, his chair motionless near the doorway. "You were happy," she said softly. He gave a faint, tired smile. "I thought I was, until one night changed everything." "You mean the accident?" He nodded, his gaze distant. "A driver ran a red light. My brother was with me. He did not make it." Sophia's breath caught. "I am sorry." He looked down at his hands. "Everyone said I was lucky to survive. But some days, it does not feel that way." Without thinking, she stepped closer. "You are still here. That has to mean something." For a moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the rain against the glass and the soft hum of his chair's motor. His eyes met hers steady, searching. "You are not what I expected," he said quietly. "And what did you expect?" she asked. "A woman who wanted my name, my money. Not this." His voice faltered. "You look at me like I am still a person." Her heart ached at the rawness in his tone. "Because you are." He let out a shaky breath, half a laugh, half a confession. "You have no idea what that means to me." They stood there in silence until the thunder faded. Something invisible shifted between them. Something gentle, fragile, but real. The next morning, they shared breakfast together for the first time, without the weight of formality. He asked about her mother, about the art classes she once took, about the life she had left behind. It felt strange and beautiful, like a truce neither of them had expected to sign. Later that week, during another public event, Sophia noticed how Ethan no longer looked away when she spoke to people. He listened, genuinely, as if proud to have her beside him. Reporters snapped photos, whispering about how different he seemed lately. When they returned home that night, Sophia removed her earrings and laughed quietly. "We fooled them well tonight." Ethan glanced at her, his voice low. "Maybe we were not pretending." Her smile faded. The words lingered in the air between them, heavier than any contract. That night, as she lay in bed, she stared at the ceiling and realized the impossible was happening. What had begun as survival, cold, calculated, and distant, was becoming something she could no longer control. For the first time, she was afraid. Not of him, not of the contract, but of what might come after it ended. Because the longer she stayed, the more she feared that walking away from Ethan Carter would feel like losing more than she ever had before. The following week began with a tension that neither of them could explain. Something had changed between them since that night in the library. Their conversations lingered longer, their silences felt softer, and the space that once felt like distance now carried something unspoken. Sophia found herself noticing small things about Ethan, the way he pressed his thumb against his wedding ring when he was deep in thought, or how he always paused near the piano in the living room but never touched it. Every detail made him more human, and that realization frightened her. On Wednesday afternoon, they had lunch together in the garden. The spring air was cool, carrying the scent of roses. Ethan watched as she poured tea, his voice breaking the quiet. "You have not asked me why I offered this deal to you," he said. Sophia glanced up. "Because you needed a wife." "That is the obvious answer," he replied. "But the truth is, I needed peace. The board was pressuring me to remarry after the accident, claiming I had lost control. They wanted a story to fix my image." "So you chose a stranger?" she asked, half teasing, half curious. He smiled faintly. "I chose someone who would not ask for anything I could not give." Sophia looked down, her fingers tightening around the teacup. "And now?" He hesitated. "Now I am not sure what I am giving or taking anymore." The words hung between them, fragile as glass. That evening, the mansion hosted a private dinner for investors. Sophia joined him, dressed elegantly but modestly, as cameras flashed near the entrance. They moved together seamlessly, almost naturally. To anyone watching, they looked like a couple in perfect harmony. Midway through the evening, a journalist approached with a smile that did not reach his eyes. "Mr. Carter," he said, "rumor has it your marriage was arranged. Some say it was for business. Care to comment?" Ethan's expression froze. The room seemed to hush around them. Sophia's heart skipped. She could see the sharpness in the journalist's smile, the hunger for scandal. Ethan was about to respond when Sophia spoke first. "Rumors are always written by those who have never met the truth," she said calmly. "My husband married me because he saw something worth believing in." The reporter blinked, caught off guard. Cameras clicked. Ethan turned to her, something bright flickering behind his usually calm eyes, pride, surprise, maybe even affection. After the dinner, the car ride home was silent. The rain had returned, a steady rhythm against the glass. Finally, Ethan spoke. "You did not have to defend me." "Yes, I did," she said. "They were wrong about you." He looked at her, his voice softer now. "And what if they were right about us?" "It's self-em." And ready were pause. Sophia turned toward him. "Then let them be. We know what this is." "Do we?" he asked quietly. The question lingered longer than the drive itself. When they arrived home, Ethan rolled his chair toward the piano. For the first time, he touched the keys. The sound was uneven, hesitant, but real. Sophia stood by the doorway, listening as he played a few slow notes before stopping. "I used to play every morning," he said. "After the accident, I could not bring myself to try again. It felt like another part of me had died." Sophia stepped closer. "It does not sound dead to me." He looked up, meeting her gaze. "You have a way of making broken things sound alive." Her breath caught, but before she could speak, the lights flickered as thunder rolled in the distance. He smiled faintly. "You should rest." Tomorrow will be long. She nodded, but sleep did not come easily. In the middle of the night, she woke to faint sounds from downstairs, the echo of a glass breaking. Then silence. Worried, she grabbed her robe and hurried toward the study. Ethan was there, sitting by the window, his head bowed, a broken tumbler on the floor beside him. His breathing was uneven, his hands clenched tightly on the armrests of his chair. "Ethan," she whispered, kneeling beside him. "What happened?" He shook his head. "Just a bad night. The pain comes and goes." She reached for his hand, but he hesitated. "You do not have to take care of me." "I am not taking care of you," she said softly. "I am here because I want to be." For the first time, he did not pull away. Their hands stayed together, silent and steady. "I told myself this was just business," he murmured. "But every time you walk into a room, I forget what the rules were supposed to be." Sophia's heart pounded. "Ethan," he looked at her, the distance between them gone. "Tell me, Sophia, if this were real, if it had started that way, would you still have said yes?" Her eyes burned as she whispered, "I think I already did." He exhaled slowly, his voice barely a breath. "Then I am already breaking my own contract." The clock ticked softly behind them. The storm raged outside, but inside that quiet room, two people who were never meant to fall in love had already done the one thing the contract forbade: let their hearts forget the deal that bound them. The following morning, the air inside the mansion felt heavier than usual. Sophia moved through the halls, her mind still echoing with the words Ethan had whispered the night before. She had not slept at all. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face in the dim light, his confession trembling between honesty and fear. But by breakfast, everything had returned to silence. Ethan greeted her with his usual composure, his tone careful, polite, as though nothing had happened. The only thing that betrayed him was the way his gaze lingered a second too long when she poured his coffee. "Are you feeling better?" she asked. He nodded once. "Yes, I apologize for last night. I should not have kept you up." "It is all right," she said softly. "You do not have to apologize for being human." For a moment, she thought she saw a flicker of emotion cross his face, but then it was gone. The conversation shifted to neutral topics: the schedule, the business, the week ahead. The fragile warmth between them had vanished, replaced by the chill of restraint. Later that afternoon, Sophia was in the garden when her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It contained a single link to an online article. Her stomach turned as she opened it. Headline: Was Ethan Carter's marriage a PR stunt? Leaked documents suggest contract agreement. Her pulse raced. The article included photographs, one of her leaving his office weeks before the wedding, another of a scanned page from the contract she had signed. Someone had leaked it. The story spread fast, shared across every major outlet. Comments flooded in. "Gold digger. He bought a wife." "Marriage for sympathy." Sophia's hands shook. She barely heard the footsteps behind her until Ethan spoke. "You saw it." She turned, her voice breaking. "How did they get the contract?" "I do not know," he said, his jaw tight. "But I will handle it." "Handle it?" she repeated, disbelief in her tone. "The world thinks I married you for money, that I am some kind of transaction." "I will issue a statement," he said firmly. "This will pass. It is heavens of the Psalms and was arrive in terments. There definitely ever seven down in him." "No, Ethan," she said, her voice trembling. "It will not pass. People will believe what they want. And the worst part is, you made it true. It was a contract." His eyes darkened. "You agreed to it." "Yes, because I had no choice," she shot back. "But I never asked you to make me feel like I was real. You did that yourself." The silence that followed felt unbearable. He finally said quietly, "You should not have to suffer because of me. Leave the house for a few days. My driver will take you anywhere you want." Her heart cracked at the distance in his words. "So that is it? You will hide me like a problem until it blows over?" "I am trying to protect you," he said. "From what?" she whispered. "From the truth, or from your feelings." He looked away, his hands gripping the armrests of his chair. "You do not understand what this will do to my company, my reputation. I cannot let emotion interfere with logic." Sophia felt tears sting her eyes. "Then maybe logic is all you have left." She turned before he could see her cry. That night, she packed her suitcase and left the mansion without another word. As the car drove away, The city lights blurred into streaks of silver and gold. For the first time in months, she had no plan, no home, and no safety net. All she had was the echo of his voice and the unbearable truth she had fallen in love with a man who was too afraid to admit he felt the same. Back inside the mansion, Ethan sat alone in the dark, the article still open on the screen in front of him. His reflection in the glass looked hollow, the words "fake marriage" glowing beside his face. He shut the laptop, his hand trembling slightly. For the first time in years, Ethan Carter had everything to lose and nothing that truly mattered left to keep. Days passed without a word from Ethan. The media storm only grew louder. Every channel, every headline carried their names twisted, dissected, debated. Sophia stayed in a small apartment near the river, far from the mansion, far from him. She avoided her phone, avoided the world. But no matter how far she went, she could not escape the memory of him. One night, her mother called from the hospital. "Honey," she said gently, "I saw the news. People will say what they want, but I know you. You would never marry for money." Sophia tried to smile through the ache. "I thought I could handle it, Mom, but I am not that strong." Her mother's voice was calm, filled with warmth. Strength is not about silence. It is about standing up for what is true. Those words stayed with her long after the call ended. The next morning, she saw something unexpected online. A video of Ethan Carter at a press conference. Cameras flashed, the room buzzing with tension. He sat behind a long table, expression steady, voice clear. "I know there has been speculation about my marriage," he said. "Much of what has been written is true. It began as a contract. I was a coward who treated love as a business transaction." The room erupted in questions, but he raised a hand. "But what I did not expect was to meet a woman who reminded me what integrity looks like. Sophia Hale did not marry me for money. She married me out of compassion for a man who had forgotten how to feel." He paused, his gaze fixed on the sea of cameras. "I broke my own contract the moment I fell in love with her. And if that cost me my reputation, so be it. At least for once in my life, I am being honest." Sophia's breath caught. The video played again, the final words echoing in her mind. "I fell in love with her." Tears filled her eyes. Before she could think, she grabbed her coat and ran out into the cold morning. The city blurred around her as she took a cab toward the Carter estate. When the car stopped at the gate, the guard looked startled. "Mrs. Carter? Please," she said out of breath. "Let me through." Moments later, she stood once again before the glass doors of the mansion. Inside, Ethan was by the window, watching the rain fall over the garden. He turned when he heard her footsteps. "You should not have come," he said softly. "I watched your speech," she replied. "You told the truth." He nodded. "It was time. I did." "You said you fell in love with me," she continued. "Did you mean it?" He wheeled closer, his eyes meeting hers. "Every word." For a moment, the air between them was still. Then she reached into her pocket and placed a folded piece of paper on the table, the contract. "Then there is only one thing left to do." Ethan looked at it, understanding immediately. He picked up the document, tore it down the middle, and let the pieces fall to the floor. The sound was quiet, but it carried more weight than any signature ever could. Sophia exhaled shakily, tears glistening in her eyes. "No more deals?" He shook his head. "No more deals. No more pretending." She knelt beside him, her hand resting over his. "Then let us start over. Not as a transaction, as two people who finally know what they want." He smiled for the first time in weeks, a real, unguarded smile. "Sophia Hale," he said softly, "will you marry me for real this time?" She laughed through her tears. "I thought you would never ask." Outside, the rain eased, sunlight breaking through the clouds. Inside, the fragments of their old contract lay forgotten on the marble floor, replaced by something that did not need paper or signatures, only truth. For the first time, Ethan Carter and Sophia Hale were free. Spring returned to New York a few months later, bringing sunlight that spilled across the skyline and warmth that reached even the quiet corners of Ethan Carter's mansion. The estate, once cold and echoing with silence, now carried the sound of light footsteps, laughter, the clinking of dishes in the kitchen. The world had moved on from the scandal, but neither Ethan nor Sophia cared about the headlines anymore. On a Saturday morning, Ethan sat by the piano in the living room, sunlight glowing over his shoulders. His hands hovered above the keys, uncertain for a moment, before pressing down the first notes. The melody was gentle, hesitant, but beautiful. Sophia entered quietly, holding 2 mugs of coffee. "You have been practicing again," she said, smiling. He looked up at her, the hint of pride in his eyes. "It feels good to play without wondering who is watching." She handed him a mug. "It suits you. Freedom looks good on you." Ethan smiled. "It suits you more." For a moment, they sat in comfortable silence, the kind that did not need words. The contract that had once bound them was gone, but something far stronger had taken its place: trust. Later that afternoon, they took a drive into the city for the first time together since the chaos. Ethan's new adaptive car gleamed under the sun, custom-built for him to drive again. As they moved through the streets, Sophia turned to him, her voice soft. "Are you nervous?" "Not at all," he said. "For once, I feel like the world cannot hurt me anymore." They're absent. When they stopped at a small park, he looked at her with a quiet determination. "There is something I have been meaning to do properly." She raised an eyebrow. "Properly?" Ethan opened the glove compartment and pulled out a small velvet box. "Last time it was business. This time, it is my heart." Sophia's breath caught as he opened it. Inside was a simple gold ring. No diamonds, no extravagance, only sincerity. He took her hand, his voice steady but full of feeling. "Sophia Hale, you walked into my life when I was convinced I had nothing left to offer. You reminded me that worth is not measured by what a man owns, but by what he gives. I do not need a contract. I do not need a company's approval. All I need is you. Will you marry me again, this time without rules?" Tears welled in her eyes as she nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "1,000 times, yes." In the dade shoes, in exaps. He slid the ring onto her finger, and she leaned forward, pressing her forehead to his. The moment was quiet, intimate, perfectly theirs. They stayed like that for a long time, until the city lights began to glow in the distance. The noise of the world returned, the hum of cars, the laughter of strangers, but inside that small car, time felt still. Sophia finally said, "Do you realize we met because of desperation and ended up here because of love?" Ethan chuckled softly. "Maybe that is what real miracles look like. Not grand, not loud, just two people who refuse to give up on each other." As they drove home, the skyline shimmered through the dusk. In the reflection of the glass, their hands rested together, wedding rings glinting in the fading light. The man once defined by contracts had learned that love could not be negotiated. The woman once desperate to survive had found her home, not in luxury but in truth. And somewhere between what began as a deal and what ended as devotion, Ethan Carter and Sophia Hale discovered what every story longs for: a promise, kept not by paper, but by the heart.